if you're young enough or single enough that you can make the company your life, then great. I mean, you can be consumed by it, and maybe it won't take away from your overall self-worth, your overall sense of balance. But we had families, and that balance was very difficult to strike. So if you're fortunate or unfortunate enough to be young and single when you start a company, and you have that luxury of being completely engrossed and obsessed by the company and by the development of the company, then you have that ability to do so without necessarily compromising your sense of self-worth or balance in your life. For us, that wasn't the case. We had families, established families, and we wanted certainly to spend as much time with them as possible, with young children in particular. So it created this tension, because what we had to do during the day was so intense, especially in the later days, that it just would cause us to create these compartments within ourselves. The benefit of that was we were able to isolate our families from the obvious levels of stress that were there. The disadvantage was our ability to engage emotionally with our families was definitely decreased. And certainly a lesson, having gone through it, that I've learned now, doing another company, doing the same thing over again, that I'm much more efficient with my time, so that I'm completely engaged every day at work, very efficient with my time, and when I leave it behind at the end of the day, it's gone. And yes, I have these moments of inspiration, off hours, and this enthusiasm for what we're doing, or once in a while some tension comes through, but it's not that complete level of separation that carries from one state to the other. Now it's more of a continuous process of balancing the two with each other.
Every new venture just needs an inordinate amount of time. That time had to come from somewhere. It was already coming from family and not sleeping, and the next place was it had to come from the time we were giving Varian. If you lose sight of that customer, you've lost your business. So while you need to manage shareholders, you need to satisfy them, you can never lose the attention on your customer. And I think there were times where we spent so much time and effort on the shareholder side because of the rapid growth of the company and just the things that needed to be done to service the next funding round and the new shareholders and how fast we were growing and adding people, that we didn't always get to spend the time we needed right there where it needed to be spent on the customer. There's a lot of energy in maybe your first startup. Okay, maybe I'm a serial entrepreneur now. I'm on number 2. There's a lot of energy expended for not necessarily a productive productive result, and that's just tension and concern and maybe because of debt and whatever it may be. I think when I look back, boy, I could have slept a lot more. I could have exercised more and had fewer sleepless nights if I just if I had just focused a little less on the tension and more on the company. You have to get out there and exercise and get good sleep so your mind can work when it needs to. We didn't necessarily do that at the beginning. We worked, all hours of the night and morning, and sometimes without sleep, would work for days in a row, and our efficiency was just so terribly low. But we thought that's what was needed to build. We learned that you have to have balance. You still have to devote an inordinate amount of time into the company, and you have to think about it pretty much every moment of the day. But you need to be healthy while you're doing it. And you can't have the highs too high or the lows too low. You really need to balance that equation. The problem is if the highs are too high and the lows are too low, it takes a lot out of you. So you need to come at it with just saying, hey, my goal is here. Let's not worry about what's in the way in the short term, what's great or bad, and just keep heading in that direction.
Well, the time that I joined Neoforma, it was a crazy time. People were working around the clock, and it could be stressful and chaotic. I think a couple of things were really important, just kind of keep staying together personally and keeping the team together. And one is stamina. You don't hear many folks in corporate business or in startups say you need stamina, but stamina, it really is a good key element to have. It's just a lot of physical hard work, late nights, early mornings, etc. So I'd say that's something to definitely have in mind. I think the other thing, to avoid chaos and avoid stress, if you can keep coming back to your shared values and your core values and weigh any decision you've got against those values, it really allows you to operate in alignment with your values, which lets you live stress-free. There were times when I'd go home at night and tell my wife, honey, this is not going as smoothly as we would like. On the other hand, there were days when we looked like geniuses, and God bless the family for supporting me in my move from Ohio out to California. When things start to go the other way, you start to question your decision, and folks around you begin to question, are we doing the right thing? And what I'm most proud of is everybody, both the employees, their families, their friends, all stuck with us and built the business over the next 7 years.
First of all, the hours were outrageous. We would literally get emails at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning or so, phone calls at outrageous hours. There's only so much you can do to work harder, and if they don't understand and they think that you're giving them a story, you have to draw the line somewhere. And then we came to a cultural issue. Literally, I've had developers working on the Neoforma site who would, I remember this one in particular, lying on the ground, fetal position, saying, he's trying to kill us, because they were trying to get 15, 16 plus hours out of the young, energetic people working on it. And we had to basically do a tag team of development for the project because people would continually get burned out. My husband and I started a company together, and it wasn't my intention to have the kind of leadership role I ended up having. But, such is life. It never happens exactly the way you plan it. He was so heads down into the development that people saw him as a VP of engineering and such, and it wasn't that. He didn't have that much time to look at the larger picture and such. And then he was passionate about a company that we wanted to spin off. And so people saw him as, the straight track guy. And so I'm saying, well, who's holding it together? Somebody better. And, another complication was I was pregnant and had a baby. So I was very busy, and it was a very stressful time. And we had decided finally, I think in about the year 2000, that it was just too much. It was too much for our relationship, and it was just too much for us to handle and manage together because we weren't quite in sync with how to manage and grow the company. And also, let's see, so we decided to part ways. We're still married, have a lovely daughter. We're richer and stronger than before. We'll never work together, and we'll never start a business together, but we're richer and stronger because of the experience. When we started to part ways, I was left as president and CEO, and my job at that point was basically to streamline operations, to tighten everything up, to basically 1099 most people, make them all independent and contract workers rather than employees as we made them. One of my first tasks was to get the extra office space adjoining our office and basically farm that out, resell that, and from there we broke even. We didn't have to have any business at all, and so that was a good strategic business move. But from there, I was basically managing the downside. This is when the bottom fell out of the market, and I knew that we had to find a business model that will work. Meanwhile, I'm still reeling from, the interactions with the husband and going off to another company and a newborn and, things like that. And so I decided at some point that I really need to cut my losses and move forward from there. And so I transitioned the company to the CTO, David Eshery, who runs it to this day, and Galatia.com is still out there. They still have clients, many of the clients that we signed on, because we do have a loyal client base. And I went off on my merry way, and I was director of marketing and business development at a nonprofit, and now I'm a management consultant, and I focus on connecting entrepreneurs, executives, and investors.
I think it's very hard for
I mean, people in these bootstrap operations, typically their families suffer a great deal, and there's no money. They're borrowing on credit cards at 18 to 25%. It creates a lot of stress and strain. Unless if they're young and single, I suppose it doesn't matter as much. But I just think that it's all a matter of timing.
It was a very exciting time, and I'm looking for opportunities like that again. In fact, it's a little bit of a killer in terms of lifestyle, but it really is exciting. And especially to say, in retrospect, hey, now I'm even part of a book.
I think you have to respect more the other parts of a person's life than just the work parts of their life. And it's, it's an easy thing to do, to fall into. We work 100-hour weeks. It's all about this company. This is what we do. We're really committed. It's a more difficult thing to get the same things done, but respect a person's life and make sure that they're healthy and that their family's happy. And I think that's the part that, if anything, I've had to learn and really grow with, because coming in here, I was much more comfortable in that startup space where literally everyone was putting everything else aside in favor of just achieving what the company was going to achieve.
We had a fairy tale idea that Jeff's wife Julie and I would go in and help, and he doesn't say it in the book, but because I was a graphic designer, he used me to design that first logo and the first big color brochure that went out, and that was really fun to be a part of it, and I was really proud of that. And I think at first I had some illusion that I would go in and I would work on the website and be a designer and do all this. And then we realized that it was going to be too stressful and that there was no way I should be a part of that, and that it wouldn't be healthy for our relationship or the stress of a new business. For both of us to be in that would not be healthy for the kids. That I had scaled my work back to, I think, half time by that point. I was either 30 hours or 20 hours. So we did kind of have this fantasy that we'd all work as a big happy family. The toll it took on our marriage did not instantly repair through that work he did. So when he finally walked away from Neoforma in 2001, we then did marriage counseling. Because by the end of Neoforma, and before the end, I did not want to hear any more about what the troubles were and what was going on. I was so sick of Neoforma and the tumultuous up and down that I couldn't even stomach it anymore. Even though I still cared and still supported him, I couldn't hear the day-to-day stuff. So, we got into a cycle that was no longer supporting each other. But we weren't about to divorce or anything. We just knew we had work to do. So when he left Neoforma, we then worked on our stuff together and finally had the time to do that. And that's what helped us recover, was to go back and do some basic marriage counseling and recapture that intimacy, and he be there for me to trust him again, because I was so pissed off at how hard it all got, that he wasn't there. So we had to rebuild our trust in each other, and we did.
The hours there at Neoforma were pretty much around the clock. There were many days that we saw the sunrise together. We had a window office, and the coffee was constantly flowing, but it was the passion. Again, it was the passion that Wayne and Jeff had, and trying to please their customers, and I was along with that. I was on board. They made me feel important in the whole process.